Hello. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, evening, depending on where you find yourself today. My name is Yeni and I am a senior manager for the workforce programs at the Partnership for Public Service. For those of you who are not familiar with the partnership, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization working to build a better government and a stronger democracy. We do that through policy ideas to make government work better. We also support leadership development, workforce programming, and convene conversations like the one we're going to have today to support the federal workforce. We are here to really support you the best way we can through resource sharing, providing plain language explainers, and continuing to do what is a hallmark of the partnership, which is to share the stories of the incredible work that federal employees do for our country. So to start this webinar, I first want to thank you for your service. And with that, I'd love to make some quick housekeeping announcements so that we then have time to jump into our session today, which is focused on realigning or help you realign to your public service mission. So throughout this webinar, you may submit a question anonymously using the Q&A function, and I will work to get to your questions. I might not be able to address every question that you ask today, so we will continue to hold FedSupport webinars on a weekly basis to dig into additional topics. So while I may not get to a certain topic or question at this time, please be on the lookout for more webinars coming in the coming weeks. And we will be posting these webinar conversations on our FedSupport website for federal employees. And finally, while this discussion is geared towards federal employees, it is an open forum, and we may have folks joining us from other communities. You are all welcome as well. And I also, before I forget, I want to make sure I mentioned that my colleague, Kristen Glykoff, is joining me today. She'll be helping me dig through the questions, make sure we keep on track. Thank you so much, Kristen, for joining. If you want to say hi, you can.
Hello, lovely to hear from you all today. I will be helping out with any tech issues, so just feel free to use the Q&A, and I'll be sending links in the chat as necessary. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. So with that said, I'd love to dig into the topic for today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And then let me make sure that's working. So Kristen, would you come off? Would you just come off to say, can you see my share screen?
I can see it all perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So the title of this session is Realign to Your Public Service Mission. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this is what we're gonna spend time talking today. But first, I'd like to recognize how difficult the past few months have been to our federal workforce. So before I proceed into discussing the topic for today, I want to communicate that my intention with this session is not to influence your personal or professional decisions. It is really to share strategies for those who have decided that they want to stay in government and can benefit from ways to continue delivering on the mission of your agencies, even through challenging times. So what I'm here to offer today to you is an invitation to pause, to reflect, to ask yourselves questions about mission alignment or realigning with the mission, and have an opportunity to really check in with your why. That's the purpose. I don't mean to tell you what to do, and I can only imagine the difficult decisions you're all making. But to the extent that the partnership can help with some questions and strategies, we want to be here for you. So with that said, there are two main session objectives for today, two main goals that I hope to accomplish during our time together. The first one is identify mission alignment dimensions and how they impact public servants' sense of purpose, and also to equip you all with actionable strategies to sustain your connection to the mission of your agencies. How we're going to accomplish that is I'm going to present dimensions of mission connection, and I will use throughout the presentation the term mission connection, mission match interchangeably at times, but it's really convey how those dimensions influence individuals differently, emphasize the role of public service motivation specifically, which is one of the 4 dimensions that I will be talking about today, and share strategies to sustain mission alignment over time. Hopefully, if time permits, I also have an exercise that I can share that you can go back and use at your agencies. So with that said, before I go into more detail about what mission connection is and explain the dimensions, I thought it would be helpful to share just a little bit of context as to why I'm here talking about mission realignment with you today. So before I joined the Partnership for Public Service, I was actually a professional in higher education institutions, and I had the incredible opportunity to work with students who were pursuing activities, internships, fellowships to get familiar with public service, get a glimpse of what a public service career could be like. And I very much looked forward to those meetings, those advising sessions where I would sit down with the students to try to figure out their public service journey, because I was able to hear firsthand the reasons why they were pursuing public service, whether it was about helping others, making a difference, advocating for others. So when I transitioned to the partnership, I had the opportunity to then continue working with students, running a program that still exists today, which is the Future Leaders in Public Service internship program, where we place students in internship with federal agencies. And through that program, I continue to witness what propels students to consider a career in public service. So I thought, what a better way to start this conversation than by sharing with you some pictures of students who are starting this journey and who are looking forward to how could they make a difference through a public service career. So this first picture that I'm sharing with you today is actually from a cohort of future leader students from USDA. And so what we would do at this event where we're celebrating the students and welcoming them into the internship program is give them a board and ask, write the prompt, I am interested in public service because, and let them, choose the answers for their statements. And this is the first group saying, I really want to help my community. In this picture, also from a cohort of future leaders, again, you can see the reasons for joining, either strengthening public trust in government, increasing knowledge and public engagement in the government. So there are very different reasons as to why also you all might have chosen a public service career. The last picture I want to share of interns sharing their why is I want to help protect people and ensure public safety. I want to help better public institutions and give the public a better future. So there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of care that you see through these reasons that the students are sharing here. And I hope this serves as a reminder of your own why. Well, that's a question you asked yourself many years ago when you joined the federal government, or that's a question that you asked yourself 3 days ago as you were trying to navigate the current times and trying to make decisions about your future. Now, to better explain mission match, which is at the core of this conversation today, I want to make sure that we share an understanding for the purposes of this conversation. So the definition we're going to be using is the one that the partnership actually uses for our best places to work category, where mission match is defined as measuring whether employees identify with the mission of the organization, believe their work is important and appreciated, and feel a sense of accomplishment from performing their job. Now, you can see in the screen the FEBS survey questions that are used to assess mission match scores at the agencies. And I'm sharing these questions because these are the questions that are at the heart of how we have defined the dimensions of mission match. Now, as I go in depth into each of these dimensions, I do want to notice, again, you can use the Q&A function to drop questions. I know myself, I think if I start to answer questions throughout, I'm going to get a little distracted, and I want to make sure that I go through the content first. So if you don't mind, I would love for you to drop questions, but I'll save them and make sure I have space at the end to answer them. So this is just me being upfront about the fact that then I will go on a tangent, and I want to make sure that you get to see all of the content that we have prepared for you tonight. Now, the four dimensions that we're going to talk about that kind of comprise mission match are really here to help guide some of the strategies that I'm going to be sharing. So one way to explain mission match is through these four groupings, if you will. These groupings have been informed by the FEBS questions, like I mentioned, but also the way in which we're defining each of these concepts. It's informed by the academic work of Professor Gordon Abner of UT Austin. So the four questions that we're going to be sharing, and that Professor Abner has, shared the definitions that he has used in his work, which again is also informed by other academics, are intrinsic motivation, organizational commitment, organizational identification, and public service motivation. Now, these are all very interconnected. It's hard to distinguish some of them. And I want to also put out there, if there are researchers in the room, if there are academics with us this evening, I want to emphasize that these are the concepts and definitions that we are working with today, but these are not the only ones that exist out there. So, academics sometimes find different ways of defining similar concepts. So if you see other ways of grouping these questions or defining some of these concepts, that's totally okay. I don't expect this to be the end all be all of mission match, but to give you something that's helpful as you think through how do you realign with the mission of your agency. Now, first, let's talk about intrinsic motivation. And I'm using the definition that exists in the academic research of Kim Miao, Nathan Eva, Alexander Newman, and Gary Schwartz. And the way they define intrinsic motivation is the desire to spend efforts based on interest in and enjoyment of the work itself. So this is when we're thinking about a dimension related to feeling personal accomplishment, whether your job is something that inspires you. This is intrinsic motivation. Now, the questions that I'm posing here in this slide for you, they can serve two purposes. If what I'm sharing as a definition resonates with you, I invite you to use these questions to dig deeper. Because by digging deeper, you realize, okay, what can I pull from here that helps that intrinsic motivation strengthen so that I can stay at this agency and feel connected? Now, if you're unsure, the questions are still going to be helpful because as you're asking yourself these questions, if you're noticing a strong emotional reaction, if you're noticing like you're spending a lot of time dwelling on one of these questions, then that also indicates, okay, might be something that is really important to you. So some of the questions that we are outlining for you are in relation to intrinsic motivation are, what aspects of my job make me feel energized? Why did I pursue public service as a career? And what about my current agency was appealing? Which job responsibilities are more fulfilling to me? And when has work felt the most meaningful? Now, it's okay if you notice that in your answers, maybe your early motivations have changed, right? So when you ask, like, why did I pursue public service? Maybe or what was appealing about your agency, maybe the answer that you have now is different from the answer that you had when you joined, especially in the context of the challenges that you might be facing at your agency. When you think about the job responsibilities that are most fulfilling to you, there may be changes in your portfolio, right? So your job now might look very different from what it looked like a few months ago. And so this question is prompting you to pause, identify, and potentially think about, what items do I need to really get back on my portfolio that can help me feel more connected to the mission. And then the question on when has the work felt the most meaningful? For some of you, the answer might be right now, it doesn't feel meaningful. For some of you, the answer might be, it has never felt more important what I do, right? And so I love to share with you a quote from a fellow public servant that they shared recently with me regarding their commitment to the agency and answering some of these questions. The prompt was like, what keeps public servants committed to their agency's mission? And they shared the fact that our statutory mission to protect civil rights is still in place, and the need for us to execute that mission is still readily apparent. So that keeps them there. The fact that our state and local partners still depend on our technical assistance daily to help their citizens. So these questions hopefully are going to help you get there to the root of, like, what is it that's keeping you at the agency, and how else can you leverage those motivations so that when you are at the agency, you can face any challenges and you can continue to do the work in a way that it's that is still inspiring, that is still providing meaning to you. Now, organizational commitment is another of the dimensions. This one is defined as the employee's emotional attachment to, identification with, and involvement in the organization. And this is by the academic research of Blake Emery, Gregory Lewis, and Jimena Pizarro Bohr. So what is really, I know that that's a very broad definition. And when it comes down to organizational commitment, it's really about a sense of loyalty to an alignment with the organization's goals. Now, what's interesting about this dimension is that loyalty can really be due to internal or external factors. So it's not only about, that pure sense of, like, giving back, public service motivation piece of the mission, but it's also, am I getting a sense of security from this agency? Am I getting benefits that I look forward to, right? So organizational commitment is really formed through the relationship between the employee and the organization, in which an employee really becomes committed to the organization when that organization, that agency, is providing positive treatment towards the employee. So employees who have higher levels of organizational commitment are having this really fruitful transactional relationship, if you will. Now, if this dimension resonates with you, or if you're curious, okay, would this be something that is really impacting how I align or how I see the mission? Some of the questions that are helpful to ask are, what internal and external factors are impacting my level of commitment to this agency? And I think in the context of what we're seeing with the federal workforce, this is a very important question that everybody should be asking themselves. Like, what are the things that are that have brought me here and that are no longer, right, providing that sense of I identify with, I'm committed to this agency. What organizational practices can I seek out or implement to positively influence my environment? And this is, I think this question is also particularly important in the long term. If you're staying at your agency and over time can have more influence over your environment. When given the choice to leave or stay, what compels me to continue at the agency? We know that there are different resignation programs out there. There's just a lot of federal employees are trying to figure out what to do. And so when you're asking yourself that question, what are the somatic responses that you're having to it? Like, how are you feeling? All of these questions are both important in terms of what you're thinking, what your strategy is, what is coming to mind first, what's feeling to you, like what's emerging as most important, but also in your body, how are you feeling about like your reaction to some of these questions will tell you a lot about which of these dimensions are more salient to you. And then what's unique about the way my agency accomplishes its mission? Because I know there are so many federal agencies and there are commonalities, right? As well as a lot of differences, but there are ways in which you can accomplish something that you're looking for, protecting the environment in, different capacities, in different roles, in different agencies. Now, the third dimension is organizational identification. And again, I recognize that these are very similar definitions, even in the nomenclature of the definitions. But this one, it's more about the perception of oneness with or belonging to an organization. So very tied to your identity. This is a definition informed by the academic research of Kim Yao, Nathan Eva, Alexander Newman, and Gary Schwartz. And it occurs when employees align their self-concept with the organization's identity and see the organization's successes and failures as their own. So this is a little different from organizational commitment. And I know it may be confusing because it sounds a lot like commitment and the actual formal definition says identification, but it's really that sense of identity and, taking things to heart. So for those of you where this definition it's resonating with you, I'd say some of the questions that are helpful are, do I see my agency's successes and failures as my own? And what effect does that have on me? What mission critical tasks can I leverage in my day-to-day work to enhance my mission connection? And this is particularly important if your portfolio has changed, if your day-to-day is removed from what feels to be mission critical at this point at your agency. And the reason I'm highlighting that, I understand, again, I want to be very upfront that there might be limitations to what you can do in this moment. But if you're here today because you are committed to staying in public service and you want to try all the ways, all the strategies to stay and feel like you're connected and motivated, it will be more important than ever that if this is important to you, that you try to find connection to those mission critical tasks. Even if that's not your full portfolio, it might be some of, pieces of a project or tasks that get added to your day-to-day. Another question that's helpful, how do I explain to others the mission of my organization and how do I feel when I do so? Again, particularly important in the context of agencies where the work is now more limited, or the impact or the scope feels more limited. And so are you having to adjust how you explain the work you do? or the people you serve, or, again, the scale of the impact of your work, and how does that make you feel? And it's that a piece that is important for you to consider as you make decisions about how to realign with the mission. And then what opportunities can I find to support mission-driven initiatives? And this is one that I'm offering here, again, a little bit more for the long term. I cannot speak to the state of like the number of mission-driven initiatives expanding at this point in time or anything of that sort. But when they exist and where they exist, how can you seek them out so that you can, again, strengthen this sense of organizational identification that is important to you, that you have realized it's important to your well-being and to the longevity, right, of your career at the federal agency that you work at. And then last but not least, I want to highlight public service motivation. This is the fourth dimension. And this one is defined in the academic research of Wisanopu Potipurun and Michael Ford, and is a particular form of altruism and pro-social motivation that is animated by specific dispositions and values arising from public institutions and missions. And that's a very big fancy way of saying it is really about serving the public, about contributing to society, making a difference in people's lives. Normally, people who are in public service score very high on measures of public service motivation, which makes sense, and it's a good thing. Now, when that is at the core of how you understand mission alignment, how you experience that mission connection, then it's important for you to be reminded of, like, how does my agency benefit the public, and what's my contribution? What is it that I'm doing to contribute to that delivery of the mission? What's my agency's mission at this moment in time? Because it might look different now. And what are the strategic priorities that dictate how we deliver on that mission? Because for people for whom public service motivation is really important, like, they need to understand this to feel like they have ownership and control over that connection to the mission of the agency. How do my personal values align with public service goals? This is an important one. And what effective mission delivery stories can help me reignite my sense of purpose? And this is where I am, I think, spaces like this one, but other spaces that have emerged where public servants can come together and share about their experiences, and you can start to see commonalities on what different agencies, what workers at different agencies are experiencing. It's really important for people with a high with a heightened sense of public service motivation, because you want to hear those stories both for your agency, for other agencies. It helps you because your co-driver is not only that organizational identification piece, but more so the contributing to the public good, the making a difference in people's lives. And so being connected to those stories of mission delivery for your agency, but also hearing how others are saying connected with their own missions at their agencies, like having that sort of a group of people that inspire one another and support one another. It's really key for those with a high level of public service motivation. Now, just as I had shared earlier a quote on to illustrate interesting motivation, I think this is a really good quote to illustrate what keeps public servants committed, especially in the context of public service motivation as a dimension that we're focusing on. And so the quote from a public servant, again, shared recently was, although I am being affected by the recent actions impacting the federal workforce, I am not at all deterred from advancing clean energy development for everyday communities to benefit from. In fact, my calling to do this work has only been strengthened. There's no better time to protect the American people from a future that does not serve them. The time is now to stay committed, persistent, and optimistic that we can continue to serve, protect, and uplift communities. So hopefully, maybe this quote resonates, maybe it doesn't. Again, the questions are not about right or wrong answers, are really reflection questions for you to dig deeper into your why, how has it changed, what kind of direction you need to take in order to, if you decide to continue supporting the mission delivery, that you can do that in a way that is fulfilling, that speaks to your heart, that speaks to who you are, that honors your priorities and your values. But I think the questions can elicit this type of this level of reflection on how you're feeling and what you want to do next. Now this might be a good time. Let me see if I can. Let me just skim the Q&A because I'm curious. So this is just a reminder to drop any questions that you might have so far. And then I want to go over zooming in on the public service motivation and digging deeper into this piece because it is so important for public servants, and then share a few more strategies that can be effective long term. So the first one is zooming in on our public service motivation. Again, this is a person's desire or interest to serve the public. Now, to continue with this trend that I've been sharing of highlighting 4 elements, I'm going to do here the same thing. Again, these are this content is informed by academic research, so they love their definitions, so bear with me. But basically, the way we want to understand public service motivation is through 4 dimensions that are important and to measure the level of public service motivation that somebody has. And so these are attraction to public policy making. And this dimension captures an individual's interest in shaping public policy and influencing governance. It reflects the desire to engage in decision-making processes that drive societal change and address complex challenges. So this is an important aspect for those of you who for whom public service motivation is a really important factor. The next one is commitment to the public interest. This dimension focuses on an individual's dedication to promoting the common good. It emphasizes prioritizing the needs of society over personal gain and aligning actions with principles that benefit the public. The next dimension is compassion, which represents the emotional connection to others' welfare, particularly those in need. It involves empathy and a strong sense of responsibility to help marginalized or disadvantaged groups. And lastly, self-sacrifice highlights the willingness to put others' needs above your own needs, often at a personal cost. So public servants tend to score really high on these measurements. And if you recall some of the pictures that I shared at the beginning from our Future Leaders internship program, or if you think back to your own reasons for joining public service, I'm sure you'll see a lot of these elements coming through. The compassion, the self-sacrifice might be something that it's highly relevant for you right now, and the commitment to make sure, you know, the public interest, it's front and center for you all. Now, for the long term, how can you use, now that you have an understanding, there's all these different pieces in which my mission connection can show up, right? What are some of the things that we suggest for as a strategy to sustain that mission over time? The first one, and these are just like a summary of some of the things that I've been mentioning throughout our time together today. Seek mission-focused stories. You get a lot of other stories, you get a lot of other news, you get a lot of other inputs. If you're trying to stay focused and aligned with your agency, seek those missions-focused stories. They exist, and they are meaningful and important now more than ever. Pursue mission-critical activities to the extent that you can, and try to engage regularly in mission-centered conversations. Like, why does this matter? Why do we continue to show up? Why are we still trying to support this work? Like, those conversations really matter, whether they happen peer-to-peer, whether it happen between people from different agencies, whether this is a space that can prompt some of those conversations afterwards in your either personal or professional circles. Leverage professional mentorship as a tool to support your mission realignment efforts. Maybe your agency doesn't have now the budget or support for formal mentorship programs, but informal mentorship can still happen, and you should still be trying to seek those out to get that nourishment that you need to be able to continue working on the mission. Communicate your desire to support mission critical work. Again, if you know that resonated with you, you have to try your best. I understand with the limitations that might exist to advocate for that, because that will help you stay in a way that is supports your emotional well-being. Celebrate when there are achievements related to the mission, and there might be things that people have been working on for a very long time, and now they're gonna see, close out projects in a way that it's what the agency had envisioned as a success. Take the time to celebrate that. It's important, the small wins, to keep them into front and center for you at this time. And then check in with your team regularly to support mission alignment across the board. And so what I want to do now is share actually an activity that we had found really helpful in helping, especially those of you who manage teams, prompt the conversation and mission connection. This exercise is called From Mission to Meaning, 5 questions to reconnect with your why. And so this is something that you can do if you're setting up a meeting with your team, and you know that this is an important issue that you want to be able to support with. These are some of the questions, and this can be like an icebreaker activity before the rest of the agenda for the meeting, or you can dedicate the full meeting to this exercise. But really prompting yourself and prompting your team to think about, what is it that I do? What impact does that have on my team? Because the answers are going to, you'll see the evolution of the responses. What impact does that have at my agency? There's a difference between like how your work impacts your team directly versus the agency, versus what impact does that have across the federal government and the interconnection of the work of so many agencies. And then what impact does that have on the American people? This is a really good opportunity to get to hear from each other. What is it that's keeping you motivated? For so many reasons, but also sometimes we go straight into the American public, aspect of it, which is really critical. But your work also impacts your team. And for many of you, that is important. The fact that your mission connection and your commitment to continue supporting that has a positive effect on your colleagues might be something that helps you feel motivated to continue delivering on that mission. Now, I'm going to take a pause here, and then I'd love to see if there are any questions that I can answer. So I have a question. It says, how can you resolve your why when there is no trust or support by the work unit to complete tasks for the agency mission? And I'm going to acknowledge it's really hard to do that. And I think finding that, so if there's no trust or support, it's going to be essential so this doesn't feel like such a huge burden that you have to carry on your own, to find what I was mentioning earlier. Where can I have these conversations that help me feel less alone on my own commitment to the mission? And I don't want to insinuate at any point in this conversation that it's an easy thing to do. It's actually very complicated, especially in the context of what I explained earlier of public servants being so compassionate and self-sacrificing and having that strong commitment to public service. So all of that it makes it really hard, but also it is critical to find, whether it's in these circles, whether it's in other circles, the motivation to if you still want to do this, if this is still like, if your why is still so strong that you still want to continue to do the work of serving the American people, then finding the support, maybe it's outside your unit, maybe the support is through informal mentorships, maybe the support is through the different groups, whether they are on LinkedIn, there are organizations that have set up support groups for the feds, so that you feel less alone, and so that lack of trust that you're experiencing and that lack of support feels a little bit like a smaller burden to carry. So those are my initial thoughts on this question, and I just want to acknowledge how difficult that is to do, and then use some of these questions to see where's the scale moving, right? How much of this can you do on your own? How much of this you need the support of others around you to help you resolve your reasons for continuing to push through, until things are better. But thank you for your question. Any other questions? Let me see that I can answer. And if not, I will. Let me see. I'll take a minute. And then if there are no questions, I wanted to make sure we get some more input for future sessions. So we obviously have already received a lot of great ideas for future sessions, but we wanted to take the time to ask you a quick poll. So the first is about how effective you feel this webinar has been. The second is about how much you agree that you will take information from this webinar and apply it moving forward, which I recognize it's hard in the context of what you're experiencing. And the third is asking for your input on future webinar topics. We're trying to host webinars every week, so understanding what would be helpful would be great. And so thank you, Kristen. I think you have initiated the poll. The responses are anonymous and will be used to inform future sessions. So we appreciate your input. Thank you all for taking the time for that poll. And then I want to make sure to highlight our FedSupport website. So Kristen, I believe you're going to drop that link. Thank you so much. This is where you'll get, additional resources, the upcoming schedule for the webinar. I was reviewing the Q&A to see if there were any more questions. But if there are not, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We know that you're busy. We appreciate that you were here. And please keep questions coming to us. And don't forget to visit our FedSupport website for more topics coming up soon. And thank you all. I understand the complexity of the conversation and regarding remaining aligned to your mission amidst all the challenges that you're facing. So I really appreciate what all federal workers do every day to deliver on their mission, and that you're still trying to stay connected to it. Thank you for making time and being here today, and I hope you'll have a good rest of your day.